All right. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Theory and Theology. Here on this podcast, we talk about spirituality and religion and cultures, and I've kind of been avoiding the 2022 lunar holidays, in particular the ones that I usually keep up with. Not necessarily saying that I'm like traditionally doing any kind of like religious thing, but traditionally I keep up with the Jewish holidays, holy days. And so just to kick things off, because we're like not through all of the holidays, there's a lot of them back to back. We're on the third one right now, of the high holy days. But I mostly just wanted to talk about this movie called Ushpizin. I think I've talked about it before. This is going to be a total spoiler, so if you're gonna watch the movie, or if you're even interested in watching it, don't listen more, because I'm about to spoil this whole entire movie for you. If you're not gonna watch it, or if you already have watched it, or if you're interested in watching it, I would say, I think it would be a cool thing to watch. If you don't know anything about the holiday of Sukkot, and if you're interested, that's kind of a good place to start, is by watching that movie and diving into it and seeing what you feel, what you think about it, how you can kind of relate to it, if anything jumps out at you. So I've just kind of got some thoughts going on in my head, so I'm just gonna get to those. So the movie Ushpizin is a word that means visitors, like visitors, yeah. And so the story, this isn't a biblical story, but the story of the movie Ushpizin, it is basically about a man who became a rabbi, and his wife. They were married for 5 years. It's kind of a feel-good story, kind of about spirituality and human nature. And so I kind of really like those sort of topics. And I came across this movie years ago, and so I try to remember to watch it this time of year. Some years, not every single year. But so basically, this movie, the story is a young rabbi with his young wife. I don't know their age. They've got to be probably in their 30s, though. They were married for 5 years, don't have any kids. They're kind of frustrated about not having any kids because, traditionally, they're Breslov Hasidic people. I believe the way it sounds like, according to the movie, is that they converted, and originally they were living some kind of a lifestyle where, the guy had served some jail time. He was kind of hanging out with certain people who were doing crimes, and he had like a temper and would, fight and drink and beat people up and, lash out at people if he thought they said the wrong thing. So, the movie has them, trying to, at the beginning, prepare for this holiday of Sukkot. So with Sukkot, usually people who are really following the traditions, like, they will put up an outside shelter called a sukkah, and this shelter is basically where they live for 7 days. If you're in places like New York or wherever, sometimes you'll see people with a little balcony, like a little, I don't know what kind of thing it is, like a little wooden structure with some foliage kind of on top of it. I don't know the specifics. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of specifics with dimensions and what type of plants you would use and all these kind of things. And you get like a citron fruit and a lulav, and it's like 7 days. I know the first day, today is the first day of Sukkot, but in 2022 it hit October 9th at sundown. So technically until sundown today, October 10th, until sundown, it's still going to be the first day. That's why I'm recording this right now. For people who are interested in that kind of thing, even if it's just like a general interest in like multicultural kind of things, like that's kind of more my interest, is more like, I like to see how different cultures are kind of similar and what I can learn from different cultures that I don't have in my main culture, that I can pull from some interesting, important, helpful things that I might kind of gel with, whether or not I was born around that or not. I always find some kind of nice morsels, like in other either religions or other traditions and other just groups of races and ethnicities of people. Like, people have some cool cultural healthy practices that I think is always important to kind of learn from. So basically, these guys, this man, this woman, they're religious at this point. They're Breslauer Hasidic converts, had been married for 5 years, and they're having trouble affording anything. So they don't have money for a sukkah. They don't have a sukkah. There's people putting them up, preparing for the holiday, like constructing them with the wood walls and, putting them up around in like different courtyards and like in Jerusalem where they live in this movie. And, the rabbi goes to this place where they're like selling the citron fruit that you need as part of the tradition, for parts of the prayers and things. Like, you need a citron and you need the lulav, the branch, it's called a lulav. And he went into the shop and like they tell him, oh, rabbi, there's some over on that wall that are like whatever cost. And he's kind of in there, like they're like, oh, those are like the cheaper rate ones over there, like 40 to 60 shekels or whatever. And then they're looking at one through like a scope, saying like, oh, it could cost maybe a couple hundred. And then somebody else is like, probably 500. And they're like, nah, probably like $800-900 to like $1,000. So the rabbi comes over like, oh, let me look at it. And they're just kind of like they know he doesn't have money like that. So they kind of are like writing him off, like the other ones are over there. Like, go look at the other ones. Aren't you going to buy something over there? And he's kind of like, no, I want to see this one. So he looks at it and they all see how beautiful it is and how it's worth so much money. I don't know what they look at. There's something that makes it worth a lot of money. I don't know what, but that's something that interests me too. All the like dimensions of things, and like with Judaism, it's very a lot of things go into depth. Like, if you look at like a lot of stuff for holy days, if you go on the websites and stuff, there's like criteria for like what's the best type of stuff you can buy for certain holidays, or the best type of garb you can have for like your religious garments and things, versus like the lower quality stuff. And so, you know, he looks at it and he's like, you know, he gives it back and he's like, okay, like, and they're kind of like, hey, what, like, you're not gonna buy anything at all? And he's like, no, like, God willing, I'll get the money. So he goes home, he goes and prays, you know, and the wife is kind of like at home a lot too, and she's like avoiding the landlord who's coming to collect money, and you know, like not answering the door because she's afraid because they don't have any money, right? And so this kind of like American Jewish guy, he's talking to one of the, I don't know who, but he's talking to another religious person who's in charge of some kind of accounting, and they realize one of the rabbis had passed away, the older rabbis had passed away, so there's this extra $1,000. So the American guy goes down the list, counts like 35 people down, because he just picks a random number, and it happens to be this rabbi. So he goes, knocks on the door, nobody answers. The wife is still home, the rabbi's still out praying, the wife is still home praying, and he slips the $1,000 under the door with a note like, you know, happy holiday, this is for you, like, you know, whatever it said on there. The wife opens it, she sees the $1,000, she freaks out, of course, and is super happy. The rabbi comes home, she shows him the $1,000, he goes out, takes it, buys her earrings, buys that $1,000 citron fruit, and somewhere along the line, one of his buddies comes up to him and says, like, we're gonna have a, like, oh, I found a sukkah for you. It's somebody, you know, it's one that's over by the yeshiva somewhere, over by where they study. And he's like, really? Like, are you sure? And so he kind of like tries to make sure, and then once he's comfortable with it, they go get it, bring it, start putting it up. So the holiday looks like it's turning around. Meanwhile, one of his old friends escapes from jail or prison, and then has a friend with him, and they're kind of like, you know, wandering around, and end up stumbling upon somebody who tells them where that rabbi lives, because he's like, oh yeah, I know someone who kind of lives over here, because the Breslover guys were looking for like donations, and he's like, oh, like, do you know this guy? And they're like, yeah, he studies at this synagogue so and so, like, and you know, the next time when the rabbi and his wife come outside, these two guys from prison are there, you know, in the sukkah, and they're, you know, the rabbi's like, oh, like, this guy, you know, like, weren't you in prison, you know, like, what is going on? And, you know, they kind of fib about it, saying like, like, we're here now kind of thing, but they're not fully done with their time, they're just escaped. So he's like, okay, just don't let my wife know, like, don't talk about this kind of stuff at all. And of course there's some times where they're like, you know, they're eating a lot, they're praising, they're worshiping, but these two guys from prison aren't like religious at all, so they kind of just have their ways about them. But then these two, you know, the rabbi and his wife, they weren't always religious either, and so they had become religious and were married for 5 years and living their life as religious people, and, you know, seemingly had this whole community of religion surrounding them. And, you know, one thing leads to another, where they get kind of rowdy with the, you know, they're taking like shots at a certain point, and they drink some wine, and they're eating a lot, and, you know, it's a holiday, so they're like studying, they're praising, they're worshiping, but they're also drinking and laughing and talking. They're all like in the sukkah, just like hanging out and like having a good time. But eventually, the wife, they start having conflict with these people because they're causing a little bit of a ruckus, playing like techno music while grilling outside during a holy day and like all this kind of stuff. And like the religious community ends up calling the cops, and these two guys end up trying to like hide out in the house, and then the rabbi kind of fends off the cops. The wife gets mad, like, okay, like, you lied to me. You knew that these guys were like escaped, and he was trying to cover up for himself, like, I didn't really know. And he realizes he did know. He did kind of know, like, he kind of knew what was going on, even though they never like directly told him. And so she leaves because she's mad. He goes off to talk to the rabbi because he's like so upset. And the rabbi reminds him, I don't remember if it was this talk with the rabbi or one before, where the rabbi is like, hey, remember where you came from, like, like, just focus on your anger, like, above all things, like, the holiday is going to be over, these people are going to go home, like, but just focus on your anger, just make sure that you're like doing well, in a good mood, kind of thing. And I kind of like that. That's something that I was kind of like, that's a nice message, like, focus on your anger during a holiday, and like your mood and how you're interacting with people. Just keep a focus on that. And I thought that was kind of a cool thing to say. And so he like does his prayer with the rabbi, with a lulav and another citron, and he comes home to find out that one of those prison guys took his citron, the $1,000 one, and cut it up and put it in a salad, and they were eating it. They didn't know what it was, but he got so mad, and they could tell he was so enraged, and he basically just like dropped the box that the citron was in, kind of threw it on the ground, and then like ran off. You see him just like running just to like get rid of that negative energy. And the holiday's over. He's outside with a lot of other men taking down the Sukkot, I guess they're called Sukkot, I guess, that they put up, if it's plural. And so he's taking his down, the one that he technically borrowed / almost stole without permission from some other guy, that one of his friends said, the friend that said he found one for him. It ended up that was somebody else's, and but he got forgiven for that, and so it wasn't an issue by the end. And so he takes it, and he goes off and kind of like gets on with his just taking things down. You can tell he's sad. His wife is gone. She comes back and she's like, hey, I'm pregnant, and so, and then you see them having the circumcision ceremony, and the two guys who were the prisoners, this is later. This must have been like at least 9 months later, or however much longer, because she had the baby at this point. And they come to the circumcision ceremony, and those two are happy to see them. So it looks like they reunited, and I mean, overall it's a good story. And so I would say like some of the things that I found interesting were just some themes that kind of came up kind of recently, which is kind of interesting. Like there was this video I was watching about, a segment of it had a woman who was saying that her, like in her culture in Alaska, there were some types of beings that they saw, and they took one of their family or friends trying to like take them away. And she said that when they said in Jesus' name, those beings kind of left them alone. And one of my friends brought that up too, like kind of like, like that's kind of interesting. And then kind of opened up the idea of like, do other religions say this, or is it only in Christianity where people say in Jesus' name? I don't really hear that many other religions talking about it. And then I was watching YouTube this morning, following up with the iced coffee hour, and the most recent one that they had on there, the guy was talking about his faith and how when he was maybe college age or high school age, he used to party a lot, and he used to have these like Jesus statue socks. It looked like it had like a Jesus statue on them, and he would party by like, he didn't drink, but he liked like the shock factor of things. So he remembered being at a bonfire and like jumping around and like through the fire and stuff, and with his socks on, and he ended up having holes in his socks, and he was like, those are like specific socks where he knew his mom would like notice. And so he took the socks, not folded them up, but kind of like crumbled them up and like put them in the back of his underwear drawer. And he said the next day when he looked in the drawer, the socks were completely whole and they were like not ruined anymore. And he also mentioned other multiple stories about like how he got healed by someone who was a religious Christian who healed his one leg was like longer than the other, so he was gonna need this Achilles tendon surgery, and the guy prayed for him and laid hands on him, and suddenly his leg that was shorter was stretched out as long as the other leg, and then his scoliosis was cured immediately as well. So he never had to get those surgeries, and he started, giving out money to people who he felt, he would kind of test them and say like, oh, I need like $1 for this, or I need a few cents for that, and they didn't really give it to him. And then some people did give it to him, and then he would give them like $500 or $1,000 or $10,000, like, and so that's kind of what he does, is he gives away money. And so those kind of stories kind of intrigue me. And then there's kind of this story within that Ushpizin movie about how they were praying about everything, and then how all the little circumstances came together so that they could have their holy day. But then they felt like it was a test, that these inmates came to stay with them and kind of like were being obnoxious and kind of teasing their religion and bringing up the past and all that kind of stuff, and kind of like and they felt like bad about like lying to them at some point in the movie, where they were like they told them they were going to the wife's house. The rabbi and the wife were going to go to the wife's parents' house to celebrate the rest of the holiday. They lied to those two inmates because they didn't want to spend the rest of the holiday with them because they were being obnoxious and they just wanted to be alone. So just that kind of stuff, like there's always like good lessons. I kind of like those types of topics of charity and giving, and like, I don't know, I'm not gonna get like super like preachy on this topic because it's everybody's individual thing, but I don't know if you've ever, I think maybe more people have probably stolen something as like a kid. Like, I think there were maybe 2 times, maybe 2, maybe 3, but maybe 2 times I remember specifically stealing as a kid, knowing that I was wrong doing it. One of them was a book in like my 2nd grade classroom, because I liked to read about mongooses, and this is like before, we had like internet in the house or whatever. And I was, my teacher at that day and age had a vinyl of that Crisscross album with that Jump song on it. That's how long ago this was. So there was no internet. Like, if you didn't have the book, you weren't really looking at it. Like, we didn't have computers in our schools like that, nothing. So, I would really like learning about stuff. And I remember, like, my parents didn't always afford things. Like, they kind of like, I used to like to just read about like certain stuff I liked. Like, National Geographic always interested me, and animals, and those little travel books. If you remember those little like series of travel books, I used to like those books. I'm talking like little kid, like 2nd grade or so, 1st, 2nd grade. Probably second. I think it was 2nd grade though. Maybe 1st. But yeah, I really liked this this book because it had like animals in alphabetical order. It was like a glossy, big, colorful book, and we were allowed to borrow books from the classroom, but I think it was I don't remember it. I don't know if it was certain days of the week, or we had to check them out or something. Like, we weren't allowed to just like take them, but I took it because I wanted it. And then another time I remember stealing something. It was, I used to help out at Sports League. Well, I used to get paid a little bit of money to clean the bathrooms after the end of the Sports League days. And then, so I would go to the janitor closet because the Sports League was held at a school. And so I would go to the janitor closet and get like the mop and bucket and all the cleaning supplies I needed to like mop up the restrooms, because there were like cleat marks everywhere and everything. And so I would get everything that I needed, and then I kind of be like ready to clean. But I remember being like, once, like, he had like razors, like like disposable shaving razors, and I remember taking 1 or 2, because I was like, whenever I ask my parents to like buy something, they don't do it right away, and like, like, it's gonna take them a while. And at that time I was still like into like shaving my legs on a very regular basis, and I was like, well, my razor is getting a little old, and like, so let me just take a couple of his, and I knew the janitor, like, and everything, but I took a couple of them. This was on a Sunday when there was no school in session. And then I remember that day, my Galaxy bag with my Walkman went missing. And so that was something that always kind of stuck in my mind, because I remember, like, I wasn't really into like theft and things like that, but I remember like the few times when I took stuff, something would always come up missing. Like, and I remember, I think my cleats were in there too, but then I remember coming around to the front of the lockers, like, because it was a school, and there were some lockers that didn't have like actual locks on them that people would store their stuff in, hoping nobody would open it. And I found a pair of cleats in there that just happened to fit me, and so I took them, and like just things like that. But like, I think about that, about like taking, like, I'm not like hung up on it, but that's kind of a topic that I think people can kind of relate to. And I'm not the first person who's ever come across, like, when you take something and then something of yours goes missing. Like, maybe it's not 100% of the time. I don't know. Like, I'm not, like, recently stealing things, so I don't really know. But, I mean, when I was a kid, I definitely had a few times when I did. When it was more than just, like, screwing around. You know, it was, like, I literally knew that I shouldn't be doing it, and then I did it anyways. And so there's that. And then I remember another day when I thought about like some, like, yeah, like I was thinking about like because I've been studying about religion and money. Like, that's kind of been like a topic since like probably 2021 or so that I've been kind of into. And you know, it is kind of interesting too how you kind of see the opposite with giving. It's like the more you give, the more you receive, if that makes sense. So I did find that pretty interesting, how that goes. And I don't know if it's like 100% of the time on both sides, but it's just something that I found interesting, just to bring up, because it's just kind of interesting topics, you know. But yeah, that's all I really had to say. But I'm gonna keep posting a couple holiday things, and then but yeah, thanks for listening.